成长于二战后的残垣断壁中，他呼吁欧中携手合作，而非脱钩断裂。赞赏中国制定长期规划、选贤任能。他说，中国为发展中国家提供了一个可供借鉴的模式。喜爱中国剪纸，促成大熊猫科研合作。他希望世界能够更加读懂中国。奥地利前总理沃尔夫冈·许塞尔接受高端访谈专访，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎来到本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵。今天我们要对话的嘉宾是奥地利前总理沃尔夫冈·许塞尔。世纪之交，他有力推动奥地利加入欧盟，是区域合作与全球化坚定的支持者。在任期内，他促成了两国大熊猫的科研合作项目，首次将中国的大熊猫带到奥地利。40多年来，他多次来华，探求中国发展奥秘，斥责中欧脱钩论是无稽之谈。在国际局势纷繁复杂的当下，许塞尔先生对于中国式现代化有着怎样的理解？对于中欧合作的未来又有着怎样的期待呢？今天我们一起在对话中寻找答案。
Mr. Schüssel, thank you so much for joining us on Leaders Talk. Well, you've visited China many times and you have caught China a lucky place for you because you joked that many years ago when you were active in Austrian politics, every time you visit here, you got promoted back home from the Minister of Economic Affairs to Vice Chancellor and Foreign Minister and then to Chancellor. So it must be really remarkable to come back here again, right?
Indeed, yeah, you're completely right. I visited, my first visit to China was more than 40 years ago. So I have really a long experience how China evolved, the peaceful rise of China from one of the developing countries, a poor country today, one of the big three, together with America, China and Europe. This is a remarkable success. And this is true privately. I was a member of parliament. I visited China, I came back and was promoted to Minister for Economic Affairs. And my last state visit to China, I remember it was Easter Sunday, I flew back and for me it was early in the morning, normally the local time was in the evening. And they waited for me, you have to become our next party chairman and vice prime minister. And later I became even a prime minister and chancellor of Austria. So China played really a significant role in my life. And I have always a very specific relationship to China because, it's giant compared with us Austrians. We are 10 million people. And, but we have same cultural tradition, music, theater, lifestyle. And we are normal people, and I think this, and friendly people, and this is something what combines us.
2023年12月，许塞尔又一次来到了被他称为福地的中国，第一次参加读懂中国国际会议。
下面有请许塞尔先生发表演讲。
作为第二次世界大战结束当年出生的欧洲政治家，许塞尔对于当前的世界局势有着自己的理解。
We are completely interlinked. Nobody can stand alone. America first, China first, Europe first, Russia first. No, we are living on one planet. We are living in the same time. And we are interlinked. We have to look for our neighbors, for the other partners, and the other competitors.
Well, Mr. Schüssel, the reason you're here this time in Guangzhou is attending Understanding China conference. And I assume that you're also aware about this increasing understanding deficit in terms of China's growing influence on the global arena. There is misunderstanding, there is doubts, and sometimes even criticism about the peaceful rise of China. So what do you think is the most important thing to overcome this gap in understanding?
Contacts, 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 communication, communication, communication. This is so important. And I think the big problem in the past, during the last years, was the COVID crisis. The pandemic crisis stopped de facto all face-to-face contacts, and this was an enormous loss of trust, of contacts, of friendship, and of course understanding. I think this is now regaining momentum. That's true. This conference, by the way, Understanding China, is a good example for that. And we had excellent debates, excellent, open, frank, and transparent discussions. Not in the normal formal way, not written speeches, read. No, really, open, frank, sometimes controversial debates. And this inspires us, this makes us richer, and could change our perception.
Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory letter to the forum in which he emphasizes that the key to understand China is understanding Chinese modernization. So how do you see the country's path towards modernization?
Yeah, but China is already a modern country, a modern civilization. If you come in with an airplane to Beijing, you see an enormous investment in renewable energy. The mountains are covered with photovoltaic. You see windmills everywhere. So China is one of the largest producers now of investors in renewable energy. You have an infrastructure, trains and highways and power plants. It's incredible. You are on top of the manufacturing sector in all areas. And I think what I understood in the context of this conference, that China is now developing two directions. One is to develop the domestic market, especially unifying the large-scale market of China. And second, China is also interested to raise the level of quality in the products, to create more high-level products, and this is quite understandable. And China has, in my opinion, an enormous chance to succeed, because your most important source for the future are the younger generation. It's not money, it's not raw materials, you have enough of them, but it is really the brains and the innovation capacity of the younger generation. So trust them, develop them, educate them, and I think then China will reach these targets of modernization, rejuvenation, and I think this is an important step forward.
You have also emphasized on multiple occasions about the need for fresh ideas to renovate multinational order and to rejuvenate political contacts among big players. Well, given that, how do you understand the significance of the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative proposed by Chinese President?
I think these are three, plus the Belt and Road Initiative, four very important initiatives. And I think it reflects also the growing role, visible role of China on the global scene, because China is one of the largest and biggest and the most important player, and I think this constructive approach is needed. We are not so interested in a kind of a bipolar world or in one hegemon who is dominating everything. We are interested, like China, by the way, for a multipolar world, but the multipolar world needs strong institutions. And the institutions today, the global institutions, are relatively weak. Congratulations, by the way, under Chinese chairmanship in the Security Council for a long time now, really one constructive resolution to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was decided. But normally the Security Council is blocked. The World Trade Organization is not so effective. I think this is something where Europe and China should work together to strengthen and to stabilize the international order and the international organizations. Next year, for instance, we have in autumn 24 the Summit for the Future. And I think this is a very important conference to create, so to say, an umbrella for all these different ideas, what also President Xi Jinping developed. Development, civilization, security, defense. This is important.
One of the key messages that you delivered here at the forum is hand-in-hand cooperation instead of head-to-head confrontation. What is your view on the approach taken by some countries who resort to sanctions, unilateralism, decoupling, and de-risking from China?
Yeah, this is a real danger that it's not only countries, you have, so to say, a public mood is a little bit shifting. Normally globalization, international cooperation was the key for development, because it made us richer, it made us more prosperous, it made us in a peaceful way cooperating. And today we see tendencies in a lot of countries and also in the public opinion that globalization is not for everybody. This is an unequal benefiting, so the rich are benefiting more than, let's say, the global south or the less developed parts of the population. There is a growing tendency for protectionism, sanctions. You mentioned sanctions. I'm more brutal saying that we see a weaponizing of everything: trade, financial streams, technology, migrants, food. So everything could be used.
And politicization.
Absolutely. So I think this is a real danger. This decoupling idea is crazy because it would make us poorer. The International Monetary Fund prepared a study in spring this year. If really America and China would decouple, it would mean a tremendous loss of up to 7% of the global GDP. And this is more than the financial crisis of 2007-8 plus the pandemic crisis together caused damage. So I think this is terrible. Decoupling would be a very negative impact, and I don't see it. It will not happen.
Mm-hmm. And you have also mentioned that China and Europe are facing more common challenges than they acknowledge. What do you mean by that? And what do you think is the right path to tackle those challenges?
You have a lot of global risks. In decarbonization, we are really working together in a very positive way. And I think in other areas, we should do the same. It's not only a pandemic situation, but also terror, cyber threats is a big problem, regional conflicts. You see the arms race, which is now unbelievable. And you see the inflation with the high interest rates. If I take just into account the debts of the European Union, this is around 13,000 billion euro. The interest, just to pay the interest for this huge debt is 500 billion euro per year. So imagine what it would be to invest in positive directions, in innovative areas, if, so to say, the debt crisis would not be as big as it is. And some other countries, especially in the global south, are facing much more problems in this respect. So we should really work together, China, Europe, also America, to help the poorer countries to overcome these problems. And I think good leadership would really have this in mind and look for positive and constructive solutions.
And you've also said before that China's return to a position of global leadership brings it with lessons Europe could learn from. So to you, what do you think are some of the lessons that are helpful and inspirational for other countries in terms of development?
I think China is insofar a very interesting model for developing countries, because they see if they open their markets, if they educate their young people, that, you know, the younger generation is the most interesting source a country has. And China did it. It's not so much the quality of your raw materials or money or big companies or whatever. So to say, how to come out of poverty, there's China a very good model. Open up, stay strong, develop your own model, It's different from the European model. It's a kind of a meritocratic, systematic look for the best talents, which is obviously working. But it's always interesting to see how this country is steadily growing up, a peaceful rise, and de facto now opening up the markets for the ASEAN countries, for the neighbors. I think these are all very good elements.
You have also praised about this long-term vision for the Chinese government when they implement different policies. Why the long-term vision really matters to you?
Yeah, I think good policy should always not look for next day's headlines or the poll next week or the regional elections in 3 months' time or the next national election in 3 years or 4 years' time. You should always have a longer perspective, maybe not for the next 50 years, but for the next 10, 15 years. And I think this is important, to put all your strength, your intellectual strength and political emphasis and focus on specific priorities. I think China is a good example for that. What China intends to develop the industry in specific areas, in quantum computer, in artificial intelligence, in bio, etc. So this is something which is important. And we in Europe, those in Austria, we do in Austria in a smaller scale, of course. Last year, Anton Zeilinger won the Nobel Prize for Physics, and he's working together with Chinese friends. He is very much interested in quantum computer and teleportation and all these things. And I think scientific cooperation between China and Europe could also be of some importance. And I think you are an absolutely good partner on the same level. This is something we should not underestimate.
沃尔夫冈·许塞尔于2000年至2007年连续担任2届奥地利总理，在任职期间积极推动中澳关系发展。因为力主奥地利加入欧盟，他被称为热情的欧洲人。因为持续推动养老金、货币体系及公共服务等多领域改革，他又有转型总理之称。工作之余，他以多才多艺著称，是职业漫画家，会弹琴、弹吉他、拉手风琴，爱好爬山、滑雪。
Well, Mr. Schüssel, during your tenure as the Minister of Economic Affairs and Foreign Minister in the 1990s, you were back then very determined to push Austria's access to the EU. Actually, at that time, there were competing voices about whether Austria should join the bloc or not. And now, many years later, when you look back, how do you evaluate the decisions made by then?
So de facto it's 3 decades later, because we started with the approach of the European Economic Area in 92. 95 we became member, and of course there were some discussions of winners and losers, etc. De facto it was a perfect success. If you look back, we de facto tripled our GDP, we quadrupled our exports, we 5 times more FDIs, foreign direct investment, in Austria, and 10 times more foreign direct investment from Austria in our neighboring countries. More than 1/3 more jobs than before. We have a significant role now within the European Union. Otherwise, we have been sidelined or outsiders. So I think this is an absolutely positive remark.
Well, Mr. Schüssel, reform has been one of the key words and thrusts in your political life. When you were in office as a chancellor, you have made transformative reforms across the board in pensions, in public services, and monetary systems, etc. And this is where you earned the nickname Turnaround Chancellor. So how do you balance the relation between introducing reforms and maintaining the status quo of the society?
I think you should know that Europeans and Austrians love the status quo. no big changes, no, everything should stay as it is because we are used to it. I'm normally, and I'm always advocating gradual reforms, incremental reforms. So the revolution is not my case. But we have to do, in a gradual way, serious reforms. This is important. Because status quo is never lasting. The status quo cannot be guaranteed. You have always to push forward and to develop your strategy, adapt it to the future, etc. For instance, you mentioned the pension scheme reform. When I introduced this reform, it was a major reform, it's true, not a revolution, but a major reform. At that time, I had, I think, outside the Austrian Chancellery, there's a big place, so-called Heroes Place. We had 300,000 demonstrators outside, 300,000, organized by the union.
Was that stressful to you at the moment?
Yeah, it was very stressful. I had my party convention. I was to be re-elected, and I had 50 speeches, 47 against my reform, 3 in favor of my reform, but I argue it again and again, and I was re-elected by 95%, not bad.
But were you hesitated or even have maybe the thoughts of changing the idea when you faced with very strong opposition?
Yeah, okay, you have to be ready for good compromises, that's true, but you should never give up. But I think it's important to go with a steady and explainable policy. This is, if you look to the Austrian history, it's also a quite significant success story. In 1945, we were one of the poorest countries of the world. The United Nations said Austria is the country most affected by hunger and starvation, etc. We have to help them. Today we are one of the richest, per capita, richest countries of the world. And it had to do that all the parties worked more or less and in consecutive order in favor of the development of the country. This is important.
Mr. Schüssel, you were born at the end of the World War II, and this has given you a profound and a personal understanding about peace and war. Because you once shared the story of your mother hiding in a bomb shelter during an airstrike for 3 days when she was heavily pregnant with you. I believe that was in February of 1945. And you also been through the post-war era when you grew up. And now looking back at your life and your career, what do you think is vital for humanity to resolve conflict?
We were living close to the railway station. Of course, the railway stations were always target. And one bomb accidentally hit our house and crushed it down. And my mother was in the cellar together with others, but 3 people died. And my mother, pregnant, was with me, survived, and it needed 3 days to dig her out, and the rest of the survivors. So this was something throughout all my life. When I was young, and I had to go into the cellar and to get some coals for our oven, I had always a negative feeling. I will never forget it. I still feel it even now when we talk about these things. And when I was a young boy in the primary school, a third of Vienna was destroyed. So I climbed the ruins up and down. You couldn't imagine. The social contract, the social coherence is in a minimum, has the same importance like economic success.
Well, let's talk a little bit something more lively. Besides being a very experienced politician, to some people's surprise, you are also a cartoonist. And when you were in office, it is said to be an open secret that during the meeting, every time you get bored, you just start sketching or drawing on a piece of paper. So is that true?
I earned my studium with my cartoons. I worked professionally, but I did it by myself. I was just an autodidact. I learned it by myself, and I made cartoons and drawings for books, for newspapers, for nearly everything. And it has nothing to do with being bored. No, not at all. It's, in contrary, it's a sign of concentration. because it's the left part of the brain and the right side of the brain. They are completely different. So I listen carefully what one is saying, and I can do some drawings or some patterns, whatever. Yeah, this is not a problem, and I do it all the time. I published a book 2 years ago. Was Mut macht, what makes us courageous, or what gives us courage. This book are also 20 or 25 paintings or drawings from my person.
So that's something that you really enjoy doing.
And I love also music. I play the cello and piano. Yeah, but I need it because you can never be completely 100% obsessed by politics. Not? Life is much more complex, and you need more, and also you need some fresh ideas and fresh room to think about, to rethink what you are doing. This is important.
You have always been dreaming that brain giant panda to Austria, and that dream finally got realized in 2003. With extensive efforts, of course. And one of the pandas is called Yang Yang. What is really amazing her is that besides being cute, she could draw like an expressionist, and it's like the Picasso in the panda world. And her works of art are even on sale for hundreds of euros and even more. So now, as a member of the supervisory board of the Schüssel Zoo, do you get a chance to visit those pandas every now and then?
Also first of all, you are completely right. This was always my dream to get the giant pandas to the Schönbrunn Zoo in Vienna. It's the oldest zoo of the world, created by Maria Theresia, the Empress, in 1756. For 6 years, in consecutive years, we are chosen as the best performing zoo of Europe. And the giant pandas are, of course, one of the main attractions. 2 million people every year are coming from all parts of Europe to see the great pandas. And we have we are very successful. We had kids, panda kids, young pandas, 4 times. So this is one of the most the greatest successes we had.
And what are some of the other areas do you expect China and Austria to further enhance their cooperation in order to bring this better relation moving forward?
So I think everything depending on green technology is an area of cooperation. Then, of course, tourism, especially winter sports. During the fantastic Winter Olympic Games here in Beijing, Austrian technology and Austrian companies benefited a lot with transport, with lifts, with clothes, with skis, with everything. So this is an excellent cooperation. Cultural contacts are very good. Water treatment is something where we are very successful, and also agriculture. So we have probably the best educational system for young farmers. This is also something, by the way, what could be offered our experience to Chinese farmers, because this is a unique experience. And also in industry, we are not alone, the so-called dual apprenticeship. This is where we train our own skilled workers in industry and small companies. Partly one day, 20% are educated in schools, in state schools, and 70–80% is education within the companies themselves. And I think this is something which eventually could also be of some interest.
So I know you have an affinity for art, and you especially love paper cutting, and even have a collection of it. Do you have a collection of paper cutting?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I do it. I did it myself a little bit. I'm not so good.
So you cut it by yourself?
Yeah, I did.
So that's why we have prepared you a very special gift.
This is
so
good.
This is from a very renowned local artist, because we know, according to the Chinese zodiac sign, you were born in the year of Rooster.
I know.
So that's why the artist they made this especially for you.
Great, thanks.
So which we want to express our best wishes to you, sir. Hopefully you will like it.
I'm really ashamed. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Why do you love paper cutting here in China?
This was exactly when I was Minister for Economic Affairs. I think it was in Canton somewhere. Don't know, it was Guangzhou, and I saw in the market a woman doing perfect paper cuts. and I bought some. And then I tried it by myself. At the next visit, with our scissors, it's not so good. Right? You have specific scissors.
Right, very sharp ones and knives.
Yeah, indeed. Next time when I visited China, I bought the scissors and I tried it myself. So, well, fantastic.
So with that, we're going to wrap up this interview with you, Mr. Schüssel. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing with your stories and insights with us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure really to talk with you, and you're one of the best prepared moderators and interviews I've ever had.
Thank you. I will keep moving forward, and yes, thank you for that compliment.
Thank you. But this is really something very
So hopefully
nice.
you will love it.
在专访当中，许塞尔先生告诉我们，第一次来中国至今已经有40多年，他见证了中国取得的举世瞩目的发展成就。他赞赏中国长远的发展规划和开放包容的合作态度。他谴责脱钩论调，斥责保护主义，反对将贸易、金融科技等一切事务武器化的做法。他说，世界各国应该携手前行，通过对话和交流应对全球挑战，共享发展机遇。感谢您收看本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵，我们下期再会。